Welcome to the test review video for topics 3 and 4. In this video, we're going to do problems 23 and 24 using Gaussian elimination. So now we're going to start to number 23, and let's set up the matrices. So my first matrix, I'm going to have, I'm starting with the first equation. That's going to be 1, -1, 1, and 1. Those are the coefficients that are in front of each variable. For the second equation, I have 0, 1, 1, and then 1 again. Remember that the numbers on the right-hand side of the equal sign are going to be 1, 1, and 3. We're going to use those numbers as well. Okay? So the third equation is going to be 1, 1, 0, and 3. Okay, so I always start off with a new matrix. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull two rows where I want to perform elimination. Now, I always use rows that don't have a 0 in that left-hand, the first column, because once you start messing with those zeros, then you end up losing zeros, they disappear. So what I like to do is pull two rows that have a number other than 0. So what I've done is I've written my two rows. I've used the first row and the third row, and I'm going to multiply by -1 on each number of the top row. So when I multiply, I'm going to multiply the -1 and 1, and then I'm going to add with the second row. So it's always a multiply and then add, multiply and then add. So that -1 plus 1 is going to give me the 0 that I want, because that's what I'm looking for, is to make a 0 on that left column. And then I'm going to do the next one, which is going to be a 2, because that's 1 plus 1 is 2. And then I've got the next one is -1 plus 0 is -1. And the next one will be -1 plus 3, which is 2. So now I have a new row, 0, 2, -1, 2. I'm going to use that row, and I'm going to replace one of the original rows. So now I'm going to write the matrix again. So my new matrix is going to be 1, -1, 1, and then 1. 0, 1, 1, 1. And then the third row is going to be replaced, 0, 2, -1, and 2. Now this is what I like, because the last two rows both have zeros in the first column. Now I can use the rows with the zeros, because as long as I have two zeros on top of each other, I can start working my way to the right and making zeros in the other columns. So I'm going to take the 0, 1, 1, 1, and then the 0, 2, -1, 2. And now I'm going to do elimination on those two rows. So I'm going to multiply by a -2 on the top row. What I'm doing is I want to make 0 in the second column this time. What's nice is that the -2 is going to make 0 in the first, 0 in the second, and a -3 in the third, and then a 0 in the fourth. Okay. So now what I've got is a new row, 0, 0, -3, 0. Since I now have a -3, or just one variable, I can say -3z equals 0. Okay, so z equals 0, right? Okay. So now what I can do is I can use the row that I see here. It's 0, 2, -1, 2. Sometimes my eye goes straight to the 1. Maybe it's because it's a different color. So straight to that one where I can do 2y minus 1. And remember, z is 0, so I can put a 0 right there. And then 2. So now I've got 2y equals 2. And so therefore, y equals 1. Okay, so now I've got z equals 0 and y equals 1. So let's go to, let's see, maybe that row would work, or I kind of like the 1103. That looks like it would be a little bit easier to work with. Okay, so what I have here is the 1x and the 1. If I plug into the 1103, I get x equals 2. So let's see here. Maybe I want to I'll put this answer somewhere else. Let's go to x. X is 2, y is 1, and z is 0. And that's my final answer. 2, 1, 0. Okay. All right. Now, I've kind of run out of room to do number 24, and so what I need to do is make us some room so that we can work on 24. I need to set up my matrix again. So this time, my matrix is going to be using all of those coefficients. So it's a 1, 1, 1, 2. And then 1, negative 1, negative 1, negative 4, and 1, 1, negative 1, 0. Okay, so what I'm going to do is there's my matrix. Now I need to pull 2 rows to do elimination. Now, remember, I kind of leave the top row alone. My elimination, or my zeros that I want in the left-hand column, are going to be in the second and third row. So I just decided to do 2 and 3, the second row and the third row. So I've got 1, negative 1, negative 1, negative 4, and 1, 1, negative 1, 0. So I'm going to multiply the top by a negative 1. And then I'm going to add with the second row. So that's going to make a 0. And then the second column is going to end up being a 2. The third column is actually going to make a 0 because it's going to be a positive 1 plus a negative 1. And then the last column is going to be a positive 4. So now I have to make my new matrix. I'm going to leave the first row as is. So let's do 1, 1, 1, 2. And then we're going to put our new row in, 0, 2, 0, 4. And then our last row is 1, 1, negative 1, 0. So now I'm going to pull out the 2 rows that I want to make 0 again. But I don't want to use the second row because that has a 0 in it, and once you do that, you just end up losing your zeros. So I'm going to use the top row, 1, 1, 1, 2, and the third row, 1, 1, negative 1, 0. Okay. I'm going to have to multiply by negative 1 on the top to make the zeros that I want. So if I multiply and add, I get a 0 in the first column. And there will be a 0 in the second column as well. The third column is going to be a negative 2. And the fourth column is going to be a negative 2. So that's great. Now I can replace the row. Remember, it's always do elimination on 2 rows and then replace a row from my new matrix. And so I'm going to have 1, 1, 1, 2, and the second row is 0, 2, 0, 4, And the third row is my new row, 0, 0, negative 2, negative 2. Now, I really don't have to do elimination again, and I'm not going to because I don't want to waste time. I already can tell by looking that the third row of my new matrix, 0, 0, negative 2, negative 2, is really the z position. I can figure out what z is just by writing out the equation now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, z is negative 2, z equals negative 2. So z equals negative 1, or excuse me, positive 1. All right, now I can do, and see the second row is very nice because it has the y is all by itself. So I can do 2y equals 4. Okay, and now I can do the x. So I know z equals 1. I know y equals 2. And if I plug in x plus y, which is 2, and then plus 1 equals 2. So if I subtracted the 1 over and the 2 over, what would I get? I would get x equals negative 1, right? So let's write out our answer. Our final answer would be negative 1, comma, 2, comma, 1. Okay? Well, that's it for this test review video. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know if you have any questions, and make sure you check out all the other videos for this test review.